Are you
Cheers.
on? Are we on?
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
This is Tom.
Hello.
And I'm Joel.
Exactly the same technologies. One was being very successful, and one was being extremely kind of missing the point. We were influenced very much by a CD that we saw very early on by a guy called Gerard van der Kap for a CD magazine called, completely slipped my mind now, Blind Rom. It was the first time we saw that you could use the new tools like Director to make really very small experiments rather than trying to make a kind of like a feature film or a novel. So the first piece of work that we did was in 1994, which was released in 95, called Anti-ROM, which was basically a mix of our little experiments in terms of interaction. It was like, what can you do with a piece of video? What can you do with a sound? So it was about, and it was, we were doing our day jobs, and we were sort of meeting in the evenings, sort of working until midnight. He wasn't part of it at the time.
I was still at college.
So I'll show you, I might have to quit out because there's a particularly nasty one that I don't want you to see. It's the first time I've actually shown this in about 4 years. It's kind of nice to sort of look back at the early experiments. Yeah. Apologise that it's got an introduction. I'm very anti-intro now.
Sound? Thank you.
Just very simple, taking phrases on the top, randomly taking phrases from the top and the bottom.
I can't keep on ringing. I've rung you about 3 nights running. You've been out. Cheerio, love. Give us a buzz.
I want to see you tomorrow night. Otherwise, I'll chat with you.
Really
then.
simple sound mixing, triangular space.
Hi, speaking, Susie. Susie? Susie Cream Cheese? This is the voice of your subconscious.
Turn me on.
To act is to pretend to be someone else.
See, computers have got a bit faster since we were trying to get every bit of every cycle out of it. Kind of a lot of it doesn't work.
You're through to the interactive dating service, the fast new way to make a date.
Wherever we are. I think what you're doing is significant. I think it will send a great signal to all of us wherever we may be. I think. Just wondering if you're in, Tom, and you're not.
The next thing I'll show you is, it's kind of nice to show you Anti-ROM, which is the oldest piece of work, and a DVD that we made with Underworld and Tomato, which basically has a lot of the same ideas in it, but is very, very sort of different and more slick, and in some ways maybe not so much fun.
It's to show you that these things actually weren't just stuff that we were playing around with and then had to go and do serious work, but we actually kept that kind of a way of working, and we tried to get jobs to also follow us rather than them tell us to do this or that. We say, this is the kind of stuff that we do and we like doing, and we try to get the clients to follow that. And this is one thing for Underworld that we did. there, baby.
So yeah, Underworld, 2 of the members of Underworld are also directors of Tomato. Oh, it's very irritating. Can you show the other one? Anyway, we won't show you the ones with video in then.
I'm a belly dancer now. Stomach talk on camera.
So once again, like the anti-rom thing, making triangular sound.
Where do you go? Super dog.
Another thing we do in quite a lot at the moment is making CDs that pull down content from the internet. So it allows us to make things that are updatable rather than static. So these are links that we've picked off the website, and so we can add another link. The live section is a piece that instead of us opening browsers, this downloads content into Director on people's local hard drive. So when Underworld played live in Tokyo, we had there's a button for seeing their live streaming. But then you get into a model where it's not about publishing, you're getting into a model of broadcast, which is a lot more expensive because you have to keep changing stuff.
Yeah. Basically, this also there's an interplay between this DVD and the website that's called www.underworldlive.com, and there's a play of things that are happening inside the DVD that you can access on the internet, like this. Basically, downloads content that we can refresh, but you can also that reflects some of the content that's on the website, so that you have these things working together rather than having a DVD, a website, and an advertising campaign that are separate. They're all in some way, they extend the space of the other one.
This is a piece, it's the 3rd CD we've made with Tomato. It's called Tomato 3. We got quite annoyed with multimedia, the way multimedia wants to be film. It wants to take over your desktop, and clients are always saying, can you make it bigger? Where we wanted, I really like little applications that sit on your desktop. So what we wanted to do was make something that was kind of like an application, but as multimedia. So you can access everything from anywhere else, basically. So. Turn it up a little bit, please. So this makes the letter that you press. So if I press an X. So you just... Something very funny in the mix. See if the...
That's the video again. So if you look at it, if you look at the CD on a desktop, you've got like real video, but it's semi-scam, so it's... That's basically an archive of our work. It's quite interesting because this CD is trying to reflect also. It's trying to reflect the environment that we work in as well, because we're in one building basically with Tomato and Tomato Films, and so something we speak often about is that we've got sort of a horizontal architecture. Basically, the top floor is Tomato Interactive. Underneath that is Tomato. Underneath that is Tomato Films. Underneath that is a gallery. And basically, they work independently. We make projects that don't have to do with Tomato sometimes. That basically we work even with other design companies and things like that. And every once in a while, we then try to bring the vertical kind of work into it, so that we have films working with Tomato and interactive working, doing things in the gallery, and things like that. And this CD basically reflects that as well. You can see there's always a cross product between Tomato Interactive, Tomato Interactive, Underworld, and little things that are sort of client orientated like there, and then the spoken word thing, which is
Another little.
is more like art based or design based.
He says, remember the first time that you flew? How you'd never been so high, but then you'd never needed to be.
And again, we've integrated the
And as though in reply, she speaks
updatability into this CD. Basically, it grabs a text file off the internet, and on that we have all the websites that we want to show you down there. So they basically come up in the browser for about a site that they maintain called Vionet 100, and they basically choose a subject and then find 100 links. So they do research and find 100 links to that subject. In this case, it was World Heritage, and they basically came to us. Then they go to an artist and say, artist, artisan, whatever you want to call it. I don't really. That's a different debate. But basically, they then say they get someone to make the navigation system for the 100 links. And I came up with this. Basically, it's a system that connects to, so this Shockwave movie connects to the internet and gets a text document. And from that text document, it knows how it has to create itself. So basically, the text document says there's 5 subsections that you're seeing right now. And in those subsections, there's links. And depending on the text document, you can change how many links and how many sections there are by changing the text document. Basically the idea behind that was Dentsu can edit their text document, and this will always be right, providing they edit the text document right. So there you go. It's basically got little sections, and it calculates how it lays itself out, rather than being laid out in a pre-edited manner. And that also reduces the file size, because it basically uses maths to create itself. It even uses maths to create its colors. So the file size is very small. It's basically one ball. And then it reflects that all the way through. So I think it's something like 12K.
Click.
As soon as you click one, it opens the page on the internet.
Do you want to go straight into Sony, or do you want to?
So basically, that was one of the things that we like about navigation. We like working on navigation, thinking of navigation. And one of the things that we sort of always try to do is keep it very simple for people to go from one place in a website to another. And that was the idea, that it's not a difficult, there's not a multitude of layers you have to go through to get from one place to another. Second thing is the navigation system is probably one of the things in a website that you're going to use the most. So it might as well be an interesting tactile object itself. And third thing I was trying to do was to give the navigation system, since in this particular instance the navigation system is the important bit, because it is the bit where all the links are gathered. I wanted to give it its right to live on its own. So when you go away from it, it still keeps on turning, it still keeps on living on its own.
Let's go straight into Sony.
So the next thing is we were approached to do a job for, a pitch for Sony. And basically they were trying to find a way to represent the products that they're going to bring out now, which are all connective. They can connect to the internet, they can connect to each other. All these products are about connectivity, and we sort of thought through that and returned a pitch to them. And basically one of the bits I'm going to show you actually something that was only in the pitch to Sony.
So it's Sony 4?
Yeah. And it's basically an identity that is, again, reactive. So the sound is actually making it move. The other idea of it was that it's not legible unless it moves. If it was static, you wouldn't read it. It takes a while, and it has to move for you to actually, after a while, come in and see that it says Sony.com. And even that is quite complex. They basically liked the whole idea, and we expanded on it, and we actually did a job for them. The idea that we went to then from this one was to create a logo that lives on the internet. So there's basically a logo, a mathematical algorithm that lives on the internet and is influenced by the world, by sensors that are put around in the world. So like this one is influenced by sound, that one will be influenced by sound, or you could have a sensor that is looking at, I don't know, how many people are in this room, and that would influence the logo if they so wanted to. So we made basically that application as a server, and another piece of, another application that connects to that server. And with this application, which is 100% Java, it's not Flash or Director, it connects to the server, and it can make image sequences that you can use in advertisements. And these image sequences are basically the current state of the logo. So if you look, I will show you some that we've brought on video, but they're basically, the moment you want to make an end tag for a commercial, you use this little application and connect to the logo on the internet, and whatever it looks like at that moment, you get. And it basically also means that there's, first of all, that the logo itself is being influenced by the world, but it also in a way is a timestamp. Every time you go and connect, and if you know what is influencing, for instance, the background color, then if you know that red would mean that it was warm in Tokyo or cold in Tokyo, then you would be able to read what the current state of the world was when that logo was put onto this commercial. There you are. That's the current state. The words change, the situations, colors change, the angles they're in, and this is all influenced by sensors that are influencing that server again. So there you go. That's the live connection right now to our test server, not to Sony's server. As you can see, it's a tomato. That's Sony.
I thought we'd just...
This is basically one interesting aspect of this is using Director, Shockwave, the multi-user server, Java as a 100% standalone app, a multi-user extra that connects to the server, and we've also Yugop's also done some work on it, so you can use Flash. It's basically one of the things that is important to us is that it's not really about which technology you use. It's just what you want to use at that moment, what you think is right for that moment, and that's a quite interesting thing as well. We don't use one technology. We have different people using different technologies every once in a while. Oops. Right. So that's that basically. If you connect to it now, you'd see the same things. That's the important thing. It's using a multi-user extra, which is doing a live connection to the server, which is quite interesting, and it's a bit tricky because we tried it here, and it's working. So very lucky.
So, do you go for the tape?
Go for it.
Yeah, because normally when we give these talks, about half the people turn up and expect to see the proper tomatoes rather than the interactive people. So we always have to bring a tape with us with some tomato work to ease the pain.
So where did you two guys meet?
Sorry.
We basically were at the same college together, but we sort of had different years between us.
Yeah.
But we were sort of.
I don't know if you finished.
No, I'd finished.
You were finished. So I saw you once in a while come by and show Andy Cameron, our tutor, some work and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the first time I saw Tom around. But the main thing is that we both studied in the same place with the same tutor and tutors, and yeah, that's.
So was Tom a tutor of yours, or
at some point he was lecturing on my course, although I missed the class because
So what did...
No, actually, one of them I did. One of them I was there.
Yeah.
So yeah, he did.
But it's more that we sort of met through Anti-Rob really, and it was very much to do with Andy Cameron.
Right.
Well,
Who
was our
seems
lecturer.
to have a big influence
No,
at
it
that
was
time.
it was very nice. I feel very privileged that I was in sort of working in multimedia when it just started.
Yeah.
And it was nice that you would work with a technician, a tutor, and basically none of us knew anything.
Yeah.
I don't
and
think
it was really nice to be able to be in that era when we were.
But your course isn't about multimedia, is it? What you're
Yeah, I
really
don't think.
studying?
I don't think. I mean, with the one thing that it's a bit of a difference that I don't think Andy Cameron really taught us so much in the sense of.
Teaching us anything.
No, exactly. No, I was trying to make this a compliment. He didn't teach us so much the thing about programming and all that. I mean, he initiated us into that kind of stuff.
No, but it was more that you were with tutors who were excited about learning stuff as well.
Extremely.
What
that
was
was
the course you were studying?
the strength about him was that he was really he gave you inspiration. He was really excited about everything that was happening in that field. So he was, the internet and CDs and CD-ROMs, computers and all that. He wasn't at all going ooh. Like that.
But did you have formal classes like in these subjects, or was this something that just came together out?
We had quite a lot of formal academic stuff,
right.
so sort of photographic history and stuff like that. But it was. In a way, it was nice because it set you up instead of being sort of taught by rote of how to do these things. It was very much a situation where it was about establishing an environment where you learn with your friends. So whenever I teach, it's always satisfying when you go to a teacher class and there's one really good technical person. And if that technical person is someone who helps other people, you go, they're going to learn a lot. They're going to learn a lot in this environment without. It's so not about being taught stuff. It's about creating an environment where people learn together.
Great thing about the subject matter is also that, you don't get tutors or teachers really that come out of a culture that's like 20 years before that, and they were sort of foreriders in their culture, and then they try to explain that the whole time because that doesn't exist. So it was just all now and there, happening in front of us. I mean, I think the great thing was they already started Anti-ROM while I was still at college, so we saw work actually be produced in front of us. So the things that we played around with on the computers at university were pieces of work that they were using for real commercial projects. So we weren't sort of, you're so far away from the actual industry. We were right there. We had our foot in the door of the industry through the Anti-ROM.
And so did Anti-ROM form after you left college, or was it a thing that was forming while you were at college?
It was about 3 years after I left college.
Okay.
It was with my old colleagues. We were all working in different multimedia companies, so it was sort of pre-internet, so it was companies like Dorling Kindersley who do a lot of publishing for children's books. A lot of my colleagues worked there. I worked on a lot of CDI projects, which is Philips' original kind of CD-based media delivery package.
What about coming on to sort of jobs and you guys getting more and more sort of work and having a bit the reputation growing of what you do and that sort of thing. How do you choose the clients that you work with? Do they choose you or you choose them, or what sort of?
I wanted to say something to the last thing.
Oh, go on.
Can I grab a bit of water?
There was one thing that I really think is that sometimes, because these fields are so close to each other, the things that we do, and graphic design and print work and all that, but it is really a lot better if people sometimes disassociate them, because sometimes it's the absolute wrong approach to the design or the graphic design approach is sometimes really not applicable, and it's much better to be totally free from that and be just working at things and not bothering about the look really of it. That comes in then later, and that's fine. But quite often what we make is, we use dummy cast members and we're just doing something. The reason for a lot of the interfaces having that little ball is that is I don't know how long ago I got actually that alpha channel of you. But that's an alpha channel that was just at some point, and I just use it all the time as an element. It's an easy element to use, and for me, it goes away from, it's just an element. It's a really tiny thing, but I can make
it when you were doing the Zuba window. you were doing some tests and you were just...
Busaba.
Was it called? Busaba.
Busaba.
And you were testing it on that, just a ball.
Yeah, it's a you know. But some people would say, oh, that's really minimalistic and blah blah blah. What I say is, that's the element I start. I you know, get the ball to move that way, get it to move it up. What is it going to move like? Do I want it to sort of have inertia, gravity, something like that? Then I start playing with it and come to some kind of a result. And often I'm sitting there going, right, what am I going to put in its place? And I say nothing. That's it. That ball's there. It's about the movement. It's about the other stuff. And the ball's fine.
How you always fall in love with your placeholders.
Yeah.
My name is Eddie Pack.
I'm David Yu.
I'm Tai Wen.
And we're the Office for Fun and Profit. We're a small graphic design studio from New York City. And we've been around for about 7 or 8 months now, so we're fairly young. We're from the Lower East Side area of Manhattan. And I have to actually apologize because we've had some technical difficulties with our presentation, so we're going to try to just do this from script and not have as much visual stimuli as we hoped to initially. So I apologize for that, but hopefully we could get our message across from what we say. I guess with that, we could just jump in and we could start talking about the beginnings of trying to create something. I guess irreverent of what your reasons or desires or client needs are, you always have this process that you go through. Just as the saying that we all know, you cannot not communicate. We believe you cannot not have a process, obviously. You have steps that you work through to get to the end product. It's not necessarily a conscious realization, and maybe that's not even a good thing to be conscious of what you're exactly doing. This is, design is creative, so maybe just kind of have to let go and let yourself put marks down on the paper or on the screen. And, but what's really important is knowing that you have this process to go through, that it does exist, and to actually revel in it, and that the way to get to the end product is just as important as the end product. And I know it sounds all academic, but we believe this, and we believe that through this that you could get a better result at the end. So you need the structure to work in, and that only really comes about from having good ideas, solid concepts, rather than just kind of chasing that end product. To give you an example of the antithesis of that, if you take that sort of thinking away, would be you're striving to make something look a certain way, or pretty much just meeting the client's end needs, or the desires of needs or desires of whoever is actually proposing this design problem to you. You know, I want it to look techno. I want it to have flash navigation, and there really is no reasoning behind that, and we see it all the time. Unfortunately, or fortunately, design exists within the realm of that, with the desires and needs that you have to fulfill. So we're not completely throwing that out, but we're saying there's much more to that. I guess something in the midst of all this technology, the web, one thing we do lose sight of is the process, because we get caught up in the technology. People saying it has to have flash without any reasoning behind it. We don't really see that in other mediums too much, probably because they're a little bit more established, but for instance, movies. You don't really have every movie director saying, we have to have 3D graphics just because it exists. It's technologically advanced. I mean, of course, there's movies like The Matrix and Star Wars, which I love and we all love, but I think in those cases, the actual technology is supporting the plot, is just reaffirming what the director or the creator is trying to do. And that's what we want to say, or convey to you in this talk, is that you really have to have that intent. You have to have these ideas and concepts as like your driving force, rather than just the use of this technology. And a clear example of that, just to give some props right now, on the web would be a site like Praystation.com that actually uses the technology, and it actually is a concept for the site. And again, technology as a concept for something is just as valid. We're not saying that you can't have that as a mitigating factor. So technology actually has to tell a story.
When I was exposed to the web 5 years ago, I was completely frustrated. I was frustrated in the sense that there's no content. Besides the slow downloading time and showcases of huge JPEGs and bad interactivities, there's no purpose. What got me excited was that it was a new medium. It was a new medium to explore design, new medium to explore technology, a new medium to explore self-expression. There were the boundaries were limitless. That's why now it's an exciting time, because design and technology is merging as one. Coming from a print background, print already had a process. It has a process of evoking an emotion.
So that was my personal site. Yeah, again, going back to other areas of interest that I wanted to pursue. I was really interested in 3D graphics about a year and a half ago. So I gave myself this thing. It was a splash screen for a design portal site called X73, which kind of explored forms of 3D and colors and trying to make this machine. So that was that. And then later, getting interested in Flash and making this site Praystation, which is a combination of Flash and 3D. Again, giving myself an excuse to kind of learn Flash. Later on, I became really interested in collaborating with other designers. One of the best things about doing my personal work was being able to meet like-minded people online, people that were doing similar stuff that we're creating, and starting a dialogue with them and naturally getting into this desire to work together, see what we can do together. So I did a little project with an old classmate of mine from Vancouver, Francis Chan, who does FameHor. This was sort of a project that I did together with him. He was actually the person responsible for teaching me Flash. So this time, not so much on the client side, it was really internally for us, was a site called Ani. Is this it?
Yeah.
We had a client, Rockstar Games, who was a game distributor in the UK and the US. They wanted a site for the latest game on PlayStation 2 that they were going to release called Ani. And for this site, like I was saying earlier, it was inspired by personal work. In the way that it was, I wish I can show it, but in a way that it was the transitions and the colors and the composition was a lot, for me, it was inspired by the Eric So site that I did previously. So that's another dynamic of how personal work can help fuel commercial work. So as for the future of the OFP, we want to keep on producing web stuff. It's one of our passions. In addition to that, we want to get into producing content, sort of like what we're doing with our personal work. Talk about the OFP.
Yeah, we actually did a project, if you could kind of visualize this, I guess, for Matt Owens' Codex series. I think it's the 3rd installment. It was the first project that we worked on collectively, I guess, as more in the personal vein than anything else. And we came up with this concept of creating a weapons pack that we create for, if any of you guys are familiar with games like Doom or Quake or our favorite, Unreal. In the beginning, you get to see a whole list of weapons that are available for the game. And what was so interesting about that was that it's kind of like a detail into this world that the game developers have created. And we wanted to kind of mimic that or create our own world. And so that was the beginning of that. So we made and modeled these guns, actually went right down to the nitty-gritty of doing all the specs and things like that, and created this project for the Codex series. And I guess if you buy it, you can see it. pretty much, I kind of briefly touched upon this yesterday. It was the first project that we got to do collaboratively as a group. And it's the idea behind this is kind of like the intros of games like Quake and Doom. You get a little intro to the world they've created. And this is kind of like a satire, or actually our take on weapons in these types of games. So with that, I'll jump. So what we did was we created this interface to showcase these guns that we actually designed, and pretty much went through your typical set of guns, like your handgun, your sniper, your BFG, if those of you gamers out there probably know what that stands for. And here you have the navigation where you could get the overall gist of the guns and also access as the navigation. And we wanted to give it a little bit of a tinge, kind of adding our humor into it. We always thought these guns always had a phallic flavor to them, so why not kind of add that into the actual designs. And not only did we design these, but we also thought about them a lot and actually gave them character down to their specs and what they do. And you could also begin to see the inner workings of the gun in a wireframe. And also rotate each gun. All right. And you also get a little demo of each gun. We wanted to actually add noises to these, but didn't have time. So I'll take you through the other guns. Yeah, this is the shotgun. We actually wanted to create things you wanted to hold in your hand.
Or your mouth.
And there's the demo. This one? Oh, the pink one. So this is like the S&M gun. It also acts as an assault stick. You could grab it by the end. And I'll just show you one more gun.
Office for Fun and Profit, yeah?
Yeah.
Who came up with that name?
I think it was a collective decision,
Was it?
and then it kind of, I think initially came up as a joke,
Yeah.
but or not so serious. It was just kind of off the cuff and kind of stuff.
Like, wouldn't it be kind of funny if it was like, yeah, right, whatever. But then, you know what? It actually kind of makes sense.
Yeah. And has it turned out to be one?
We're trying to make an equilibrium on both the fun and profit, but yeah, for the most part, it's going all right on both ends.
How did you guys get together, or where did you all meet? Did you college together, or?
No, I think the first thing, I met Eddie about 3 years ago, kind of online. We saw each other's work, personal work, and started emailing each other and met up. We're both in New York.
Right.
And then about a year and a half ago, met Ty. And then the three of us just kind of got together and hung out and a few drinks. And
So you're all from New York?
Yeah.
Okay. And how did that, you joined together, formed a sort of collective sort of thing, and just started doing work together, started doing your own sort of experimental play work or commercial work?
I think from the onset it was really, we solidified just through friendship. It was more like on a personal note, not even anything related to work, that we actually came together as the Office for Fun and Profit.
Yeah.
So underlying this whole thing was our friendship, wanting to go out and hang out with each other, and it was more that than business.
Yeah.
And then, like, the business end of it just kind of fell into
as well. Here.
But you've got like a very sort of casual feel to your work, very sort of fun, playful sort of side of it as well, which is well, very refreshing on the web as well.
I think it's also like all three of us came from like all these big agencies, and you know, and we kind of want an environment that we could just go in there and like hanging out, but we're actually working, but having a feeling that we're just hanging out.
So what's the like your office now? I mean, how big is it? Is it just the three of you? You got a whole network of people, or
it's just the three of us in the space. The occasional DJ stops in and out of the office once in a while because we do have a turntable set up.
Yeah.
We're in an area, the Lower East Side of Manhattan, in an old school building. It's kind of like an artist space. We wanted to stay away from the office building.
Yeah.
So we've got a pretty nice space, high ceilings, no hung ceiling.
Yeah. Good one. And so, with your clients, tell us about your clients, or some of the stuff that you've been doing recently, or how your clients come to you, and or how they found you.
Well, I think one of the reasons, besides the friendship and for us to kind of form this company, is our personal work that we were doing had certainly the unexpected outcome of fueling commercial work. People are kind of coming to us who liked our stuff and wanted us to do what we do for them. So the kind of clients that have been coming to us has been sort of like that, sort of part of the same culture that we're in, which in our case, it's a lot of it's entertainment based.
Mm-hmm. So
it's an ideal, in a lot of ways, it's an ideal situation to be in because our personal work almost acts as a filter for the kind of work that comes into us.
Mm.
You know, someone that, for example, who does banks, or a banking website probably wouldn't come to us, nor would we be too interested in working with that.
Yeah, and so it brings me around to sort of say, well, I mean, how much choice do you get in the work that you do now? Do you sort of manage to be able to choose the jobs you do?
I think, you know, we're still new, so we probably not at the level we want to be at, but like as David was saying, there has been kind of like this, I guess what we call a filter of people actually approaching us, so it hasn't been too difficult to take on the work that have approached us. It's not like we get something so absurd. Actually, we did get one absurd call, which was a random phone call to do signage on an advertisement truck, and they had no idea who we were.
Hello, I'm Aaron Hoffman from Tubatomic.
And I'm Alex Ogle from Tubatomic also.
We're both from Tubatomic.
Surprising.
Pixels Pushing Vectors. That's the title that we've chose for this talk today. It describes our process of turning video into flash animation, as you've just seen. But to us, it represents our attitude. No money to mo money. Of course, I'm being sarcastic with that because we definitely were not rich by any means. But when your original budget was only $70, it doesn't take much to be more than that. But we were real excited being signed with Eruptor. One of the cool things that Eruptor did was they brought in some screen actors from Hollywood Olivia Dabo, who was popular in the television series The Wonder Years, and also in the TV series The Single Guy, and Thomas Jane, who was in Deep Blue Sea, star of that, and also in Boogie Nights. So they brought these two people in as the stars of the show, and so we were really psyched to be working with these Hollywood stars, you know. And in addition to that, we also got some new equipment. We got G3 towers, so we got to retire the 7100. So that was, we still have it though. We didn't, I mean, that's our main machine. We're not going to throw that away. But we still have the 7100, and we're working with digital video now. And we also moved the production to Lacey Studio in LA. Here's some photographs of us shooting the actual episode in LA. We had people up on, or Olivia was up on some suspension wires there and doing some cool aerial stunts. We actually had stunt people on the set. These guys were crazy. I mean, they wanted to die. I don't know what their mentality is, but they were always trying to fall off of a building or do something crazy. So they kept a lot of entertainment on the set. There's me holding up a very intricate piece of artboard there, which actually turned out to be the bottom of a bridge. So you can see that we can get away with a lot in our animation. There's Alex with his video wizardry. That was being sarcastic. Yeah. We also had props guys that were there, which was really cool for us. They were very talented, and all we'd have to say is make this, make that, and they could whip up anything in the matter of minutes. So it was really cool working with a full production crew. There's Johnny beating up a bad guy, and Mark Silvestri, who directed the whole thing. It was a major deal working with him. So we had all these things. It was great. We had so many things that we didn't have before, and we were really looking forward to animating all this stuff because we just shot it. But we ended up learning a lesson from all this stuff that we had done and using all these people.
Yeah, sometimes simplicity is better. One thing with working with a crew out in LA on a shoot like this is that all these people are trained to do high quality video and film, whereas we just needed anything that had the exact right lighting, and so that was an extremely important thing that we had to have. And trying to tell a lighting guy that you can't quite light it like that because it's not going to work is really hard to do, and that was our roles when we were there. So also there was a lot of background problems. We had to remove a lot after we shot it because we were on location. So it was a lot of brick and things in the background that was really hard to remove. We shot originally as white, so that had a lot of vectors that we had to get rid of. So we actually relied totally on our Wacom tablets to actually go through and trace around the characters and everything. And so that was definitely a crucial part to speeding up the production at that point, but it still took quite a long time. Also, if anybody's going to illustrate, buy a Wacom tablet.
The sound can go up on this.
You'll notice a lot more sound in these episodes.
don't like being restrained.
It is only a precaution, Johnny, until we can find out what's happened.
Well, somebody's turned me into a walking time bomb, apparently.
If only you could remember the details of your last mission.
You sent me on a mission to retrieve stolen data from someone I knew. I got in easy enough. Something strange. Someone I knew. I can't remember. I'm sorry.
Don't be. The target must have done something to your mind.
The target? What target?
I'm sorry, Johnny. That information is classified.
Someone has turned me into a walking time bomb. You're gonna have to do a lot better than classify.
Alex and Aaron from Tubatomic. So, hi guys. So, when did you two come together? How did you meet? Were you, colleging or since college or?
Basically, we were working together. We both worked at the same company, and I was heavy into music, musician and graphic designer, and Alex was doing illustration work. He had his own comic book series that he worked on, and he was also a graphic designer. And so basically what we wanted to do was merge our talents together, and what we came up with was to do a comic book and CD package. And we knew the best way to promote this package would be to go to the web, because that was the cheapest way and the best way. And this was 3 years ago. So we started building a website, and Johnny Nitro was born.
Johnny Nitro. So who was this a creation of you both, or was this basically your creation?
I had a character in my portfolio as a sample that I just made up, and we were looking at those sample pages and thought, why don't we just elaborate on this character and define her more and make it happen.
So tell us more about this character.
The character is basically a spy, kind of a James Bond kind of thing, only reverse gender role, obviously, and she has an ability to actually blow things up. So it's kind of a superhero style thing, but also with a little spy edge to it.
Yeah.
So in the black and white style that our animation is done in, it kind of goes real well and lends to itself.
And so how many, is this a series of things that a series of projects that you've been working on, or is, because I think I read on your site that you were talking about maybe turning it into an animated feature or something, or an animated series for?
Yeah, right now we're doing it with Eruptor.com.
Right,
we signed with them, and it's very much comic book-esque, because Scott Lobdell, who was also a writer for X-Men and The Darkness, is writing it now. So we're doing it in an episodic fashion. So yeah, it's one big story, but we're doing it in 5 to 7 minute episodes, and so we might end up putting them all together at the end and creating one big story.
But in terms of this character and this sort of series, is it something that up till now has been like a plaything, or like an idea, sort of just your kind of sort of thing that goes on the web, it's free, and now it's becoming a commercial product?
Yeah, that's how it started out as. Like I said, we just we weren't even planning on getting into web animation at first. But since we started using the web as a promotional tool, and we started getting into Flash, we came up with this new style of animation, and the animation started to get so big that we just started doing it full time. So that's where we're at with it right now. And then as it gained popularity, then we signed with Eruptor, and it has become more of a commercial thing now.
And what about your other commercial work? You know, stuff that you're doing in you know, how do the clients come to you, or are you sort of people banging on your door, sort of, and you're allowed to you can choose your work, or is it still?
Yeah, we're kind of working now the same way that we were 3 years ago. We're creating new series and episodes, and kind of just putting them out there and seeing who's seeing if people are interested enough in picking them up. Yeah. Right now we're working on a 30-minute long animated series, or not series, but a movie called Ghost Vector that we want to premiere on the web here soon. And so we're really looking forward to that. Something that is more of a movie to be streamed over the net, and we're real excited about that.
But most of the time, we do not take on client work. A lot of times we develop a product, which we then shop around and sell to an actual portal or some entertainment site that actually wants content.
Yeah, that's a nice way of working, from the other way around. So you're actually doing the product first, and then sort of getting it seen on a variety of locations. And how do you work on the projects themselves, like in terms of the two you guys? Is there other people working with you, or is it just you two guys?
Right now it's just us.
Yeah.
We're keeping it small, but we will probably need to expand here soon. But for right now, there's no need to do that.
So when you take a job, for example, like you're working on something, how do the two of you work on it? Then how do you sort of separate the parts that need, in terms of your skills, and sort of?
Alex is the lead animator, and so he handles most of the animation. And then I handle the sound and audio. We both do website work and Flash work, but our main roles are me in audio and Alex in Flash, or in animation. And then of course when we shoot the animation on video, we have a whole crew, a production crew and everything that helps us, and then the actors and all that. So we definitely have a lot of help doing that.
One of the things that we've just been talking to all the people this week about is one of the consistent answers that comes back is that everyone says they never saw how they quite got into the situation they're now in. If you retrace your steps backwards, where did you sort of, redo your path backwards? Where were you studying, and what did you study, and what did you think you'd probably do? Or?
Well, I mean, the funniest thing about it is that our first episodes that we were doing were just test shots, basically. They didn't even have a script to them. We added the story in later. We just invited some friends over, bought them beer and pizza, and had a good time. And thinking back on it, we figured that our original production costs were probably around $70 per episode. So we were extremely low budget. We were just doing it as a side project. And no, we never expected it to get this big. Both of us were just mainly working in graphic design, illustration, stuff like that. So we never expected...
As freelancers or for other companies?
For other companies, yeah.
All right.
So we never expected it to get this big, never expected it to be in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
Hi. Hi. My wife's not going to believe this. Hell, I don't even believe it. So many people out there. Okay. My name is Josh Davis, and let me grab some stuff. As you said before, you can put the house lights down. How do you like the hair? I was walking around gawking everybody. So that was just going to give you a little bit of movement and some ideas of some of the interactivity that we're doing. But I want to tell you a couple of stories first. Macromedia flew me out to Japan in October, and never been to Japan. So I go to Japan, and I got a bit of a sweet tooth. I like candy. And so I was in this hotel, and right next to this hotel was a 7-Eleven. I thought, score, right? Candy. So I walk into 7-Eleven, and I walk up to this counter, and I see this thing that, well, it kind of looks like Starburst. And I buy it, and I'm squishing it, and, well, it feels like Starburst. And I pop it in my mouth, and it's fish. So I was a little confused. So I walked over, and to make a long story short, I ended up buying the whole aisle, and it all tasted like fish. Now let me tell you another story. Hang in here with me. I'm going somewhere with this. So then I go to London, and I'm in this hotel, and I kind of go up to this floor, and I walk around, and it takes forever to get to my room, and finally I get to it, and I'm thinking, gosh, there's got to be an easier way to get back down to the lobby. So I have my card key. This is not the card key, but I had my card key, and so I'm holding it, and I sort of walk outside, and I think I'm going to go around the other way, maybe there's a shorter distance and down. So I walk through this short way, and I'm sort of walking around a bit with my card key like this, walking around. And all of a sudden, I see these doors that say private, private, private. And I think, maybe I shouldn't be here, but I'm still a little cautious, so I'm walking a little bit more. And all of a sudden, I see more rooms. So I'm like, okay, so I just keep walking. Then finally, I come to this weird, kind of big, enormous, strange-looking door, and so I go through it. And all of a sudden, the wallpaper changes. So I've got my card key, and that's strange. And so I'm walking around a bit, and there's these beautiful lamps. And I walk around a little bit more, and then all of a sudden there's this gorgeous woodwork. The hell? I'm in the bad part of the hotel. I want to be in this side. This has got great wallpaper. So I'm walking around. All of a sudden I get to the elevator, and there's this marble, there's this gorgeous wood, and there's a chandelier, and I'm thinking, now this is an elevator. So I push this thing, and I push the elevator, and I go down. I'm like, wow, this is a great elevator, and I'm standing in the elevator, and all of a sudden I walk out, and I'm in this enormous lobby. And there's guys walking by with tuxedos, and I'm in this tank top and tattoos with the card key still. And I'm thinking to myself, where the hell am I? Walking around, right? So then finally I see this woman, and she's got a little name tag, which sort of keys me in that, well, she's going to tell me where the hell I am. And so she kind of walks up to me, and she comes up, and then she looks down at my card key, and she says, how did you get here? Right? She's not helping me. I felt like I just sort of stepped into a Twilight Zone episode, and I somehow beamed to a different thing. So she says, well, you're in the hotel on the other side of the building. You see, there are two hotels that are attached to each other, and you somehow got into this one. Did you happen to walk through a fire door? So you can imagine at that moment, I'm sort of doing a backwards flash sort of transition through the hotel, all of a sudden closing the big door, fire door. So I set off all these alarms, guy with the tattoos, people with tuxedos. So I'm a bit confused, okay? So one time I'm in high school, and I walk into my mom's kitchen, and I open up this cupboard. Right? She's got all these spices. She's got oregano. She's got all this stuff. All of a sudden, I see this box of food coloring. So I grab the box of food coloring, and I'm looking at it. And I flip it over, and it says non-toxic. So I take out red. unscrew the cap, tilt my head back, and put a couple in my eyes. Now, for about 20 seconds, the whole world is red. Some of you are going to try it. Email me. So then I was in college, and I wanted to know what would happen if I set all my artwork on fire. So I started burning all my artwork. And what I found is that I was working with this oil-based paint. I was working with these two resins. And when I worked with these two resins and I applied heat, the top layer would crack against the bottom layer. Okay? So then what I started doing is I started doing these paintings on paper. I started baking them in my oven, 450 degrees. 7 minutes, turn, 7 minutes, turn, baking my artwork. And what I could do is I could create these really modern images, and I could crack them. I could make them look like 500 years old. Okay, so all the stories I just told you. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what was going to happen until I put the food coloring in my eyes. I didn't know what was going to happen unless I burned my artwork. So when not understanding things, I find things. Okay? Now the story about Tokyo and London, basically when I moved to New York for the first time, I got on the subway and I was laughing my ass off because it was a roller coaster. It felt like a roller coaster to me. I was jostling around and we were going really fast underground. Never been on a subway before. Well, it takes maybe 2 months and all of a sudden I'm not interested, right? Subway's no longer interesting to me because it just gets me from point A to point B. It's no longer that exciting experience. So what happened is I became complacent, right? So I'm no longer interested. Okay, let me show you something. I'm going to launch my DVD player here. Now, in 1980-something, Walt Disney came out with a movie called Tron. Okay? Now I want to show you a couple excerpts from this movie. Watch this. There's sound with this too. Okay, so they come out with this really crazy movie. But what do? Well, we go to the electronics store and we buy a DVD player. And we put it on top of our television, and then we go out and we buy a DVD. And what we do is we buy the DVD and we walk over to the television and we put the DVD in the DVD player, and I say, okay, go in, and then I step back like this, and then I sit on my couch and I press play. And then I watch the movie. Okay? So we're seeing the same experience the whole time. So what I decided to do was I decided to search the net for like about 3 or 4 days and see if I could figure out stuff about the DVD format. So I started looking at decoders, encoders, players, spent about 2 days looking at all this stuff, and I ended up finding this thing, right? I find this thing called Elicard. And it's actually an MPEG-2 player, okay? So then I thought, well, what would happen if I actually go and try to read the raw data off of the DVD? So I open it up and get these weird green lines. I thought, well, that's sort of interesting. And then I play. Now you got to turn up the sound on this one. This is unbelievable. Yeah. I've watched that like 90 times that way. And it just keeps getting better. So the point that I'm trying to illustrate is that, a simple thing like a DVD, there are instructions, and there are instructions that says that I can only put the thing in the player and then just watch it. Well, I think that's crap. There's like so many different ways to like take ideas and bend them. Forget about the instructions. Here's the case where the DVD, now if we kept this playing for a bit, the thing that's hysterical is it plays like the sound effects backwards. It plays at double speed, but the people talk in French. Wow. Okay, so, I just wanted to talk about thoughts about complacency. Like sometimes we get into this routine and then we're like no longer interested in finding the things that are interesting, So to sort of illustrate that a bit, I was working with this guy named Brandon Hall, and I developed some code with him. And it's the Windows Explorer. So I was trying to like reduplicate the Windows Explorer, and somebody said, well, why are you trying to redo the Windows Explorer? And I said to this person, the Windows Explorer is like the ugliest, most heinous thing in the world. So that's why I had to do it. I had to do it because I hate it. You know what I mean? Like how many times do we build things because we like it? I don't want to build things that I like. I want to build things that I hate. I want to build things that I don't like. Well, why? Well, can I find out why I hate it? Or can I find beauty in something that I initially dub as lame? And can I uncover things, right? So I'm exploring something I don't like, right? Because to choose means that something has to go away, okay? So I build the Windows Explorer because I hate it. So I covered a couple of things, and I want to show you. You can see my cursor down here. See I'm shaking? Well, here, let me move towards the top for the people in the back. There's my cursor, okay? So I did this in Flash 5, and I thought, well, it'd be kind of cool if you move into it, I change your cursor, right? So you move in there, I got a custom cursor. So I sort of thought about that for a little bit, and then I thought, well, what happens if I stop moving? Goes away. And if I move again, comes back up. Okay? So I actually spent a week thinking about the cursor. Why? Well, because we're complacent. It's just a cursor. I say, no, it's not just a cursor. What can a cursor do? Right? Well, I can do a custom cursor. I can make it fade away if you don't move. And then I thought, well, I got this little scroll bar here, right? So I'm going to move it down, and then I'm going to click this. It's scrolling up, and you notice I am no longer scrolling. But the cursor's still there. So I wrote a piece of code that says, well, hey, if you're performing an action, stay with us, right? I'm pressing the mouse for all you guys who can't see. But the minute I let go, it goes away. So I spent a week thinking about the mouse. And you know what happened? I ended up getting rid of it. You know why? Because it doesn't work so well on Mac. Macintosh doesn't do so hot. I think there's like some weird kind of bugs that on some cases when you say hide the cursor mouse, it hides it and then never comes back. I kind of enjoy that as well. So I ended up scrapping it, but the point was that I took the time to think about the cursor for a week. Why? Because it's just a cursor. It's become this complacent thing. So then I started thinking about like scroll stuff, right? So like here I got the scroll bar. And you can see here, this flash file basically generates this tree using XML, okay? And that's what's so great is that this is just an engine, okay? It's just components. And then I say, hey, go look at this text file. And the text file actually has all my tree data, and it pulls it in. So I can build this once, never touch it. And then all I have to do is update that text file, and it updates this. Okay, so here you can see I played with the dates, right? And you can see here I have this menu, and I can scroll this up. I can do it this way. But then I thought, now look at the size. Here's the top. Here's the bottom. Well, if I close January, look what it does. It changed. And if I close this one, and now you see that it's reevaluating how much content is in that area. And if I close it completely, it says, you don't need a scroll bar. It's that exception to detail. You know, they say God is in the details. You know, if you're not willing to sit down and think about every little thing insanely, even if you decide not to use it, in the case of the cursor. In fact, I ended up not using this at all. But the point was is that there was lessons to be learned. There was exercises to perform. Okay? How many people know Praystation? I'll pay you guys later. Thanks. Praystation is a site that I bought 4 years ago. I actually bought the domain 4 years ago. And for the first year, I had no idea what to do with it. I went to Catholic school. I thought maybe I'd do like a little play on religion. Didn't do that. So I bought this domain, and for the first year, I started doing some, because it was PlayStation, I kind of came up with some like fun design by hacking into video games. You know, like I cut off Mario's head and put Yoshi's head on Mario's body. Like, I was basically dismembering video game icons. So I did that for about the first year, and then I really didn't have it in me to kind of do it again because I never really felt like it was me. I sort of felt like as an artist and developer, like I had this something that I wanted to tell people, but I didn't know what it was. And so I sat for about a month, and I sat for a month, and I sat for a month, and guess what I came up with? Nothing! And I didn't know what to do. And so by the end of the month, I said, you know what? I'm just going to make a calendar. And if I make something, I'll put it up. Real conceptual. So I make this calendar, and I start putting stuff up. And it wasn't until like 4 months into it, I thought it was a pretty good idea. So about for 4 months, I thought, I don't know if I really like it. And so what I started doing is I started building experiments in Flash. I started doing some research and development. I started thinking about maybe how things move or how we can affect things. So here's an early piece where I just basically have these two markers. And you can see that by clicking them, I cause them to move from side to side. But if I keep clicking, I stop. You know, I can kind of, okay, so this is obviously different than traditional tweening, you know, in Flash. I have to wait till the tween is finished before I can do something. This is all mathematical. So I started playing with math. Misconception. I suck at math. Yeah. In the late 80s, I was a sponsored skateboarder. I wasn't going to math class, guys. So let's look at this piece, for example. I'm really bad at math, but I can understand a couple of things, right? One thing I can understand is that if I need to get to that bottle, and I'm over here, I'd say, well, where am I? Well, I'm right here. And I'd say, where's the bottle? Well, it's right there. Well, what's the distance between me? Well, about 10 feet. Go half the distance. 5. Where are you? Where am I? Let's go half the distance. Where am I? Where are you? Let's go half the distance. Where am I? Where are you? So what happens is, because I'm going half the distance, I get that speed up, slow down. Now the question is, do I ever get to the bottle? In real math, no. If I keep going half the distance, I would never get to the bottle. Sort of that weird trick that you learn in math when you're in high school. But in this case, in Flash, we can only go 3 points past the decimal point. So yes, in fact, I do get to the bottle. That's all this is doing. This is saying, where are my boxes? Where's this? Let's keep going half the distance each time. So that's where you get that speed up and slow down. In the case of the top one, it's dividing it by a different number than the bottom one, and I just keep changing the number as I'm going down. Okay? Let's look at a couple other ones here. Real estate, notion of real estate, of not being able to have a lot of space to convey ideas. The web is a very compact space. So stacking things on top of each other, and as I move, they come up on top. Okay? I did this project, Barney's, and again, let's think different. I was going to all these websites that were done in DHTML, and for some reason, people who make DHTML website decide that 4-point type is okay. Now, I'm almost 30. I still consider myself somewhat hip, but I can't read half the websites out there. So that obviously being a weakness, right? That's a weakness. Don't make small type because people can't read it, okay? Something obviously that I should avoid, but obviously I do things that I hate. So I decide, well, I'm going to make all the type small. So I actually did make all the type 4-point. And what happens is, as you roll over it, it blows up. Now, I have 18 things here. Obviously, if I had kept this type at its height, I wouldn't have been able to put nearly as many of these in this area. Again, thinking about real estate, thinking about how can I excite the user? How can I surprise them? How can I anger them? God, another site that I can't read. But then they roll over, and then things come into focus, and they think, wow, that's odd. And then they keep exploring. They're left to keep trying to dig into it, to find things. So there's this notion of interactivity and experimenting, but still functional.
What did you study? What did you study at college? What did you do? Did you go to college?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
As a child, I used to do pictures with my book reports.
Right.
And I was in the second grade. I was 7 or 8 years old, and I was drawing pictures with my book reports that I had to turn in for school. And the teacher said, he has a pretty good form, hand and eye for drawing. You might want to nurture this artistic ability. And so in second grade, my parents bought me an oil painting set.
Right.
Not crayons, not... They full-on bought me like an oil painting set. So here I am at 7 or 8 years old, with oil paints, which is of course the messiest art medium you could possibly play with, turpentine to clean. So I'm this kid with an oil painting set, and it was sort of surprising because I don't come from an artistic family. My mom cannot, I love her, but she cannot draw a stick figure to save her life. My father is an engineer. Did work with Martin Marietta, actually building rockets for NASA. I mean, not a creative family at all. And so they start nurturing me in this sort of, journey of art that I'm about to go through. And so, I'm painting all through my childhood, and I get to high school, and I'm still painting, still working with oils, and I end up entering this competition in the state of Colorado. That's where I grew up. And I ended up taking second place in the state of Colorado for painting. So, I'm really doing great, really sort of expanding sort of my art form, kind of going from there. And at sort of that point, I decided, I've sort of have become a big fish in a small pond. The art scene in Colorado was very small. And I said, if I'm going to make it, I'm going to go to New York.
As an artist.
As an artist.
Yeah.
And so I ended up packing up all my stuff in 3 boxes, a plane ticket, and $300. And just, boom, I've arrived.
Yeah. I'm here.
Of course, the money runs out immediately, and I'm I didn't have a place to live, and I'm living out of these 3 boxes, and I almost became homeless, and it's just messy, it's bad, and it just ended up that I ended up.
How old are you here? How old are you at this point?
I'm in my mid-20s,
right,
early
okay,
20s. I'm 22, 23, something like that, and so I have this job in Tribeca doing data entry. Doing computers, totally, again, not creative at all. And it was sort of really upsetting that I wasn't fulfilling any sort of artistic needs, and so I quit my job and said, okay, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to go to college, and sort of just dive back into art and take out loans to help me pay for this process. So I ended up going to Pratt in Brooklyn, and I ended up taking out all these loans, and I'm going to school for art, and studying communication design and topography and illustration, and I ended up minoring in art history. So I'm learning about myth and history and art history and mythology and technique and
theory.
So I'm really just soaking it up. And somebody had given me some computers, a 286 and a 386 DX266, and they were running DOS. And I was the type of kid that I like to take apart things and put them back together to kind of figure out how they work. So I'd take apart a toaster, put the toaster back together. I'm like, okay, I know how a toaster works. Take apart a radio, now in my early days, I would always take the things apart and then I'd put it back together, and then I'd have extra pieces, and I'd be like, see, the toaster still works, but. So I ended up taking apart these computers and putting them back together, and okay, yeah, I got it. So I totally know how a computer works. Again, just a very technical approach, has nothing to do with art. And I wasn't doing so hot in college. I was running out of money. The loans weren't enough to really sort of support. I was living on my own. I didn't have a roommate, and so I was like 4 months behind in rent, and I was going to get evicted, and the electricity had gotten turned off in my apartment, and I was on the top floor, so I'd actually taken an extension cord and actually had ran it outside into the hallway and plugged it into a light bulb so that I could have electricity for my alarm clock, my computer, and a little lamp. And I had my gas turned off, and all I was eating was top ramen and macaroni and cheese. It was horrible. So I was really at wit's end, and I sort of had gone to the school, and I said, I really can't afford to go to school here anymore. I'm not even, and I just basically told them my story. And so, this woman, the dean, runs off, and she's going to see what she could do for me. And during this period, I had put together these prototypes of a children's book that I had written in Illustrator because I wanted to be a children's book writer in Illustrator. I really had just admired Shel Silverstein and Dr. Seuss and Maurice Sendak and Chris Van Allsburg, and I could just really get my head around this because it was really simple illustration, really beautiful illustration, and then just simple thoughts, just really simple, no big words. You could just kind of get through a children's book within a few minutes, and you could really just be taken to this really fantastic place in just a very short period of time. So I really was drawn to children's books. So I figured, okay, that's what I'm going to be. And I had put together these prototypes, and I had sent them off, and I got declination letters back saying, well, thanks, but no thanks. So I told my friend about this, and he said, well, don't worry, there's this whole internet thing. You can self-publish. So I thought, oh, okay. And so I go out and I buy this book on Netscape 2. It had just come out. And so I read this thing from page to page to page, and I was like, I have no idea what the hell I just read. So now let's speed up again. Here I am waiting. The dean runs off, and finally she comes back and she says, we're going to write you a check for $3,000 to help you pay for your bills. Because I was sort of doing rather well with illustration, and the school didn't want to lose me as a student, and so they ended up writing me this check. And she says, well, did you ever think about getting a job on campus? And I said, well, yeah, I tried, but they wanted me to babysit kids from midnight until 7 in the morning, and I was going to school from 9 to 5. So when was I going to sleep? So she's like, okay. So she runs off again, and I'm in financial aid, and they're writing me this check, and she ended up coming back and she goes, do you know how to write websites? Well, I just read this book, but of course I didn't understand any of it. I was like, yeah, of course, yeah, I can do this. So I ended up getting a job on campus. I ended up getting actually the highest paid job was $9 an hour. It was amazing. Not only could I pay off my bills from this check that they had given me, but I had a great job on campus making Pratt's website. And so I worked with 2 other individuals, this guy Lee Willett, who was the head of the publications department, and a former student, Thomas Nolan. Well, Thomas, as some people will know, is a very famous designer in the community. He runs a site called typospace.com, and he also, I think he currently works for Method, which has studios in New York and in San Francisco. And he was, very talented visionary at the time, and I just soaked up, and he really was my mentor, and I just sort of soaked up everything that he could offer, and that started it. Just totally fell into the internet on accident.
And what's interesting about our studio, I think, is that we try to do, it's hard, it's really hard nowadays, but trying to balance graphic design, interactive design, if we can, broadcast as well, and trying to sort of make sense of the space in between. And I think that's what a lot of our work sort of it's like, when you see it, it's like, well, is that moving, is it not, I don't know. And I think that sort of, that place between mediums is something that we try to explore as much as possible.
It's like the ultimate goal for us is when people are going through our work on our site is to say, well, I'm not really sure if that was an interactive piece, if it was a print piece, if it's a still from a video. At that point, then we've reached what we're setting out for.
Yeah. And what we're going to start out with today is a piece that's something I developed about a year ago. It's just a little experimental piece. But what's interesting about it is that for how simple it was, we were able to use it to actually sort of educate a client and show by example. And I think that's something that a lot of our work tries to do, is like being able to sort of put your foot forward. And I know the OFP guys talked a lot about this as well, is that you really have to be able to show by example. You really have to be able to want to do it with or without a client, and then be able to, when you do that work and people come to you and talk about it, you can understand how things can be applied. So here's a little piece called Notations on Transient. We got to get the sound too.
I just can't. What can I do? I'm sorry,
So it's really simple. Basically you have, an object that you drop in, and then when you drop something, this other stuff happens. It's very simple.
Really?
And for a lot of it's very basic, I think. But for a client to be able to show this and explain it is super important, because I think when you just sort of explain things verbally or conceptually with a brief, it's not enough.
I mean, because one of the things that we run into a lot is that we have clients that are staking, probably every client is actually staking a lot in the work that we're doing. And to take a risk on a new interface methodology, even though we know it works, to be able to talk to them about it, they may say, well, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, or can't we just have like a row of buttons because we're sure that that'll work? And so being able to actually show a client something in an interface methodology is very beneficial.
So this after the notations piece, Nike came to us with the idea to do this sort of whatever.nike.com campaign. And they wanted to do something that had some filmic quality, and they did multiple endings for their commercials.
That I worked on. I co-designed a book with Laurie and Scott Makala a couple years ago with Thames and Hudson called Where Is Here? And this was really starting to kind of work with the ideas of typography as object, and something that you can kind of explore, that you can trace. Many people have said that you can stick in your mouth, and really starting playing with the positive and negative within the type forms.
And some folks here might recognize this. This is a cover I did for IdN a little over a year ago, and also using dimensional typography, but sort of doing it in such a way that it becomes not so much typography as just form. And this was actually the web issue, so it's taking actual screenshots from online and then being able to use those as kind of a background texture, and then using the 3D form as this kind of like counterpoint. So I think it's an interesting, and you'll see a lot of this in our work, is like this use of sort of dimensional typography and trying to use it as an expressive thing. And I think that's where, in our little synopsis of our speech, is like this notion of the synthetic, the notion of the machine-made or the computer-made, and bringing that into a kind of, into a kind of human level. It's sort of being able to make it sensual, make it tactile.
Well, it's also, it's important to us, even from like the point that you can't negate the designer's presence in the work. It's like we as a designer have intervened, we have created type as object. You have to consider it not just as a word, but even the whole idea of what a word is.
And then this is from Image Source 100, and also using dimensional typography as a kind of counterpoint to the toy. And I think in a lot of our work, you do see this sort of this kind of play with the idea of like toy, childlike objects, things that are handheld or feel like they're human scale. And I think it's interesting here, the 3 as a counterpoint to the 2 on the car, and this sort of the sense of it being almost like a child's block, or like a toy, not unlike the actual race car itself. So, it's interesting to see how you can take dimensional typography and use it as this expressive thing, and use it in conjunction with sort of photography to sort of tell this kind of story, this kind of counterpoint.
And toys are pretty great too, because ultimately we learn so much of the toys that we play with. It's like Mom might give little Susie a Barbie set and might give little Bobby a construction set. And how can we kind of play with that, manipulate it, kind of bring people back to a space where the world's a little bit new? This is just a personal exploration through form and trying to find a common space between stasis, something that's completely like still and supposedly not moving, and static, where it's cacophonous and always in question, and trying to find a shared space through typography.
The next 3 things you're going to see are sort of spreads that we've done pretty recently. This one's for AltPic, which will be out probably in the summer.
Actually in March.
In March. And so also you can see this sort of dimensional typography and this sort of the image strip. And for us it was, you're doing something for a book, and it's like, well, how much do you want to say? How much language do you want to, put in? What do you want to communicate? And I think for us, this sort of, the sort of expressive nature of this sort of movement and the gesture is, really for us was like, okay, well, this says all it needs to say if people are interested in us. And so I think being able to sort of take the words out and use the visual and use the sort of dimensional aspect of sort of, computer-generated sort of, 3D stuff it's really interesting to us, and it's something that we've been exploring for a while, and actually going to see in a little bit sort of how this kind of thing has translated into client work as well. And then these next spreads are also
These are spreads that we did. Emily King and Christian Keisters are doing a book for Thames and Hudson that'll be out, I think, sometime this year. And these are all pieces done on the idea of the intervention and really starting to interfere with the space using architectural form to talk about, again, the positive, negative, the in and the out. And again, representing our work as kind of a band that kind of goes through it. And, wordplay is definitely in language, and the idea of space or something that goes through both Matt's and my work. And so the first spread dealt with the idea of cleavage. Cleavage actually only exists by the boundaries that are around it. But cleavage also means to split, so that whole kind of wordplay, the back and forth. This is a promo card for a typeface called Wix that I designed a couple years ago, and it was based out of a lot of the work that I was doing with 3D type, and was trying to figure out a way to actually do a dimensional typeface. So I'd worked out and drawn all the characters and started extruding them, and my artist in residence at the time, Scott Makala, came into my studio and he was kind of looking around, and he was like, said, yeah, it looks really good, looks like a lot of the stuff that you've been doing. And he starts picking up some of the Fisher-Price toys that I collect off my shelves, and he starts kind of spinning them around and playing with them. And he goes, you know what, Warren, what I really want to see is what it's like inside these characters. So this one goes out to Scott. It's called Wix.
Yeah, it's cool. All right, this is something that was really fun for us to do. It's for the Cooper Hewitt Design Museum. It's pretty new, and the Cooper Hewitt are definitely stalwarts of design in New York City, and they had 2 exhibits. It's actually kind of rare for them. 2 exhibits happening at the same time. The masterpieces of the Vitra Design Museum, which is basically 100 chairs from the Vitra, And then also the opulent eye of Alexander Gerard, who did a lot of fabrics and a lot of textiles during the 60s.
Yeah, and it's interesting about Gerard too, because he's like the unspoken one. It's like the Eames get all the credit for all this work that came out during that period, but a lot of the fabrics and like the textiles used throughout Braniff Airlines during the time were all done by Gerard.
So this site basically allows you to toggle between the two. But what we wanted to do is like, this is all about these actual objects, physical objects. So we're like, you know, just simple photography of the actual chairs we didn't feel like it would be enough.
One of the main goals for us was not to create just a coffee table book about these chairs. And so we started thinking about, it's like you have an offline experience that's very much about responding to the chairs, kind of looking at them, noticing their form. And so how do we kind of duplicate that in an online space?
And what's cool is you can actually like rotate the chairs and check out all angles. What's funny is who couldn't actually shoot the actual chairs, the physical chairs, because too big, too costly.
And they were in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and they weren't even in New York. So what we did was we actually got all the miniature chairs that the Vitra sell, and we shot all the miniatures.
So we went down to like Bed Bath & Beyond, and we got one of those like Lazy Susans, and we like covered it in white paper and put a paper clip to kind of mark it out. And then Lee took his digital camera and we just shot 360s of it.
Yeah.
So.
But it's really funny because I think for them it's a great solution. It really gives you a sense of the range of, the actual range of chairs, the sort of the breadth of the actual exhibit. And it's cool because there was definitely some ingenuity involved. It's like, if we don't actually show these chairs in kind of a three-dimensional space, it's going to be kind of lame. It's not going to be that great. And just going that extra level for the client and like saying, you know what, let's get all these chairs, let's shoot them, let's see what we can do to really make this thing special.
Right. And one of the keys was this whole notion of the textile and the tactile at the same time. Of being able to, when you roll over, you probably can't sense it, but on the bottom bar, this is actually using some of Josh Davis's code, you roll over one of them and the caption pops up and the other chairs move out of the way. So you actually feel it. Like you actually, when you're using it, you actually feel the chairs kind of push away and separate. So you're actually having this like physical response to something that's totally like, flat 2D.
That's good because it's very, it's a reflection of the actual chairs. Since '97, I've been doing this this website called Volume 1, and it's updated seasonally, so 4 times a year, and 4 projects 4 times a year. And really what this is for me, and it's, when I was working at a company, I was completely like sick of working and doing client projects, so I was like, I need to sort of let loose. I need to find like a miniature graduate school again, because I got out of grad school and I didn't do any of my own work for like almost a year and a half. So Volume 1 was this sort of like little miniature personal laboratory that I started. And, this is I started this thing pre-Flash, but I kind of kept the same format because it's like, you can't do much more than 4 projects in like a 12-week time period for yourself. And for me, it's small enough to be manageable season to season, but it's big enough that like now, after 4 years, it's like, 64 projects, and it's cool, and it's cool for me to go back to them. And I want to show you some pieces from this. Maybe a little louder than that. I mean, a lot of these projects are, some of them have very little to do with like anything more than just wanting to make something and wanting to just kind of play around. And some of them are like, you know, sweat it over and like have a lot of meaning to me personally. But what's kind of cool, at least for me, it's like getting it out there and just kind of doing it and just having fun. And what I think is awesome is just being able to have these little projects be online and kind of have a life of their own. You know, and there's a lot, I mean, for me, that's the best part. Is like, it's sort of like, I do these things to sort of, you know, have an idea, get it out there, and then kind of let it go, and then come up with other ideas. But it's great because it's sort of like, it's almost like an ongoing sketchbook or document for me. And a lot of these, you know, it's like a lot of the concepts are very basic. Like this is sort of a back to school piece, sort of talking about the banal, you know, high school classroom experience, which I'm sure all of us have had. I mean, being able to just make a little rumination on a little sort of exploration on it. You know, it's cool because being able to take your own photography. I work with a lot of different bands. Like I have a lot of friends that do music, so being able to work with them, come up with loops, be able to put something together that's really like outside of the constraints of client work, but really, you know, I learn things that end up really informing a lot of client work, and it keeps you on your toes, especially when things, you know, technologically change. It's like inevitably, I think, you know, Flash 5 is a whole animal. So it's like to be able to really learn that, you have to kind of set up your own challenges. And like Volume 1 for me is definitely this place that kind of forces me to, you know, get back in there and do something and like explore and, you know, just never stop learning.
So I'm now joined by Matt Owens and Warren Corbett from 19.com, and pleased that they've been able to talk to us on this DVD. And we're just going to sit and talk to them for about 15-20 minutes about some things that they find important in their work. Firstly, how did you become involved in web design? Where were you doing beforehand? Where are you up to in web design now? Where do you think maybe it's going to go, would take you in your business?
Well, like I went from undergraduate directly into graduate school,
right.
And then right at the end of graduate school, I started doing interactive stuff, like in '95. Just sort of got into it sort of accidentally, and then, you know, having done print work and things like that through grad school, right when I got out, it was sort of like I think the internet was just getting to that point of being more of a commercial enterprise as opposed to something that wasn't necessarily that commercial, and so that's how I got into it, just super early on. Just kind of just a friend of mine was doing web stuff and said, "Would you be interested in help me out?" And I was like, "Sure."
Going back even further, then, let's find out a bit more about your undergrad stuff. What did you study at college?
Well, you studied political stuff.
I studied political theory.
You did what? Which one?
Political theory.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Were you at the same college, or how did you guys meet?
I went to school in Texas, in Austin, and I did good design. And then I met Warren in '96 when I was working at Method 5 in New York, which was a web development company that got bought by Exceed. Then Warren was working at Condé Nast doing...
Because I had been at GQ and House and Garden, was doing the whole print thing, and Condé Nast in '95, I guess, end of '95, determined that they were going to start a web vehicle for Details, Mademoiselle Glamour, and GQ, and also provide original content. And a friend of mine who had worked with the GQ was leading it, and he's like, "Do you want to come design this thing?" And I mean, obviously it's any art director's dream to get their own magazines. I was like, hell yeah. And knowing basically nothing about online space, did wireframes and we got them all approved and then actually started designing it. And during that period is when I met Matt, because I'd seen his work and ultimately seen he'd gone to Cranbrook Academy of Art in Michigan.
and emailed him and said, yo, I see you went, what did you think? And Matt was like, why don't you come down, we'll have lunch and we'll talk about it. And so we hooked up.
And what's the structure of where you work? Is it just you two guys, or is there a whole network
Well, it's
behind
us
you?
two, and then Lee Meisenheimer is our full-time designer, senior designer, and then we have a freelance project manager and an intern, and then we bring in other people from time to time. So we're really 3 core and then 2 sort of secondary, so 5 of us that do the main work, and then we hire out for specific
for audio and for like back-end development database, things like that.
Are you still involved in print work as well? Yeah. How much are you sort of split up between sort of web
Probably
stuff?
90% web and 10%.
Yeah.
Though we are doing a large project right now that is for an artist on Sony, and so we're doing both the web presence as well as all the print packaging, billboards, point of purchase, the entire campaign.
It does
so
come and go.
so that's taking up quite a bit.
Yeah, and there's some overlap. You know, it's like, it's definitely not one. It's becoming more and more that we're doing maybe offline and online components. Like we've done a couple projects that were brand identity projects where you're like, oh, we're a business, we don't have any kind of identity, so we do the identity work and then go and do all the print collateral and then do the web experience as well. So it's phase out.
Just do the whole package.
Yeah, the whole package. And I think people are looking. I mean, we're interested in that just because we both. I mean, like I went to Cranbrook from '93 to '95, and then Warren went from '96 to
97 to
97 to '99. And Cranbrook is a very print. It's known for its sort of avant early '90s, late '80s print stuff. And like we both sort of born out of that lineage of being really interested in the printed page and what you can and can't do. And I think the online space I think is more a matter of. I mean, I've always been into it, but it's like. But it's not like we came. I think we come at interactive work as designers first, as opposed to like, oh, I was a computer science guy and I got into the web. We're graphic designers, and like it's like I did hypercard stacks and stuff like that back in the day. So it's like it's always been kind of a. I would say like there's always been this kind of parallel process between graphic design as a discipline and then interactive design and how it's come and gone. And so there's always been this parallel track. And so I guess as a studio we kind of function in that way too.
And we just want to say thank you as well thanks. You won't believe it, but you literally can only see the front row of people, which is quite good. Yeah,
that's good.
I think what we want to do today is, first I want to say thank you to IdN for inviting us to Hong Kong. I think it's really nice to be here, and it's for me personally, it's the first time I've been in Hong Kong, so it's very exciting, and I think it's a really exciting city. So I think what we want to do is probably take you back to London with us a little bit, and we called the talk Exposed because we thought it would be interesting for you to just sort of see where we work and how we do things and how we work through different problems, like some of the projects that you just heard. The Design Museum London came to us and invited us to pitch. I believe it's one of my favorite sites because I think the metaphor that we employed actually worked really well throughout. The Design Museum, as you can see on the right, came to us at its 10th anniversary and said, okay, we haven't got a website, we do want the website, and launch into the 21st century with an online presence. And they came to us with a very clear brief, which was about more the employment of imagery rather than heaps and heaps of text. It was about informing and exciting about design rather than showing every single design piece in its detail. It was about being a teaser rather than being a sort of an archive for all the design pieces that were shown. So we obviously did research at the actual museum because it is a physical space, so that we felt is a natural starting point. And we sort of went back and sort of erased our memory of the museum and said, okay, let's really experience the space. And we just sort of walked around and had a look at how its layout and how the architecture works in there. And I mean, as you could see from the image before, it's a very sort of quite minimalist Bauhaus-like building, very, very simple, very, very straightforward. And we came up with a very simple metaphor. We said, okay, consider the activities of the museum, which does activities around the UK and internationally, to be like a cube, a 3D space. And consider to be the actual various galleries within the museum to be like a cube within a cube, and then consider the actual design pieces to be a cube and a cube and a cube. So I think we felt, because of the simplicity of the metaphor, it's something that we actually could really use and gave us a lot of design possibilities. So you could say that, why don't we try a square browser, for example, which could represent one face of a cube. And you could imagine that you use a cube to navigate if you spin it left, right, or this way. So it becomes quite a powerful metaphor that you can employ for various design solutions. You could use it for animations, actually physically. And we sort of thought of, okay, what happens if you unfold a cube? You end up with this shape there, which we might be able to use as well in the design. So we took this metaphor and really developed, if you look at the homepage, so we took this metaphor very literally and actually used it as a solution to the website. And I think important to point out at this point is that it was supposed to be a teaser rather than showing the entire product. So we said, okay, what we're going to do on the site is we're going to show the product in great detail and almost show one small glimpse of it, so that if you really want to see the product, you have to go to the Design Museum itself and actually look at it in its physical space. Obviously, we had to consider the very simple corporate identity that the Design Museum already had, and we were quite happy with that because it's a very simple and straightforward corporate identity. We were using, whenever a user goes to the website, we said, okay, let's design a whole load of different homepages, which all have got a different product on the homepage, so that you, again, this sort of educating and exciting people about design. We thought this was quite a good way of doing it, showing them a real design classic and having a look, and then encouraging them to go to the museum. The other thing I just want to show you some of the ways the navigation. I mean, Joshua was talking yesterday about screen real estate, and obviously the browser window in this case actually posed some sort of problems where we said, okay, we are using a square browser, so what are we going to do? Where are we going to put all the information and all the navigation? So we employed some sort of simple methods of just having the navigation there whenever you need it. And if I just go into one section. So we're using quite literally the cube as a sort of navigational metaphor, and I think it works in a way that if you introduce the concept to the user, they are more likely to actually expect the right thing. And if you show them a cube and you say, okay, you can spin this cube and you can look at the different faces of that cube, it's quite a logical sort of concept, and I think people find it almost easier to use it if you do that. Some ideas we had about when it comes to telling people how to get to the museum, we could use that actually to excite them again about design and tell them more about the different. Well, the point being that design is all around us every day. So why don't we tell people that a tube can be a piece of design, and we tell them who designed it and when. And in the same way, you could say if they take the bus, and we tell them, okay, who designed this bus and when? And it just tries to make people aware of design around them. Additionally to the brief, we came up with something that we called Gallery Cube. The next project I want to show is quite an old one, really, and it's not live anymore, unfortunately. But you can see it if you go to the Deepend London website. It's still on our server, so if you want to have a look at it, you can. It was designed in '98, and they came to us. I'm showing it because I think it's a good example of taking a brand online and solving a very direct problem. When VW came to us and said, okay, we're going to launch the car in the UK in 1999, but we want the website up now, so that's a year before. And we sort of had to come up with something that would enthuse people and sort of create an experience that people would like. The other interesting thing is, I think, Volkswagen used the internet as their only communication tool. So they didn't plan any advertising on television or plan any advertising in print. So they said, we're going to go with this product, we're going to go all the way using the web, which I think is very interesting because they obviously in their target audience, they found that the people who are most likely to buy the car are people who are quite internet savvy. So I thought it was quite a good, strong commitment by the company. I think it's more likely to create an experience because, again, we're using a very simple concept where initially, when we heard we're going to do the website for the new Beetle, we thought of the old Beetle and thought, okay, it needs to be something that is based on the heritage, and it probably is a bit hippie and it's a bit, bubbly and sort of colorful, colorful environment. But then Volkswagen said to us, no, we don't want that. We want a car that's for the 21st century. We want something that points into the future rather than the past. And the concept we came up with is simply consider the car to be an alien landing on Earth. And the website is a tool that allows you to observe that car. So all the terminology, all the sections are called as if it's an alien encounter. That's why it's called close encounter or previous sighting or flashing lights. So if we go into one of the sections, I think the interactivity is obviously very important, that you allow people to have an experience. And so you can take the car and spin it round and look at detailed sections. Again, the sort of, if you consider it to be an observational tool, then we got our ideas pretty much for the interface from that, where it says, okay, we're going to use simple curves because the product pretty much spoke for itself. It's a beautiful, it's a beautiful design in itself to work with. So all the imagery obviously pretty much inspired the website. And obviously, there were certain sort of considerations we had to take into account regarding Volkswagen. They obviously wanted something that was quite straightforward and graphically quite simple. But I think still within these boundaries, we sort of managed to push the limits a little bit and put the navigation slightly different and have it, for a start, have it in Flash, which is something that at the time wasn't that given. So again, I think it illustrates sort of that, the starting point pretty much was the product. And it's sort of throughout, we're using that sort of alien metaphor. So we're calling it, rather than calling it different paint jobs, we're calling it skin color. So again, suggesting that this is an alien landing on Earth. Which I think, in the UK, it was received really well, and it sort of kept people talking about the car and the site as such. So I think it was successful in that respect. We developed a game which, I don't know if you use that, if anybody drives an old Beetle, it basically, if you drive an old Beetle and you encounter another old Beetle, you flash your lights. And we were saying, okay, let's just use that fact and make a game out of it, where you basically have to flash as many lights towards other Beetle drivers, and if you flash your lights to another car that's not a Beetle, you're losing points and stuff. So, and that game was really, really successful. People played it a lot, and it amazed us how much people played it.
Last year in September, there was a Flash Film Festival in Berlin. This was based around the Beta Film Festival, and what we were asked to produce was, first of all, to do an interactive trailer that would be sent out to participants and people that might be interested in it, and then to produce a cinema trailer for, obviously, to show before all the films. So for me, this was quite an exciting thing to work on. We got to go to Berlin to see the actual stuff on the screen, and it was really just based around using the Flash, using animation, just to make something that would grab people's attention, and it's really just an open brief. This was the mail out that we did, so this was sent out to all different people. I think there's some sound on this if you want to turn it up.
Oh, is there?
It should be. Thank you. So it's a bit lost on the screen, but it's quite a random thing, so you move your mouse around the screen. It's using all the elements from within Flash, because obviously all the people that were going to be entering it would be using Flash to produce their pieces of work. So for that, it was something quite interesting that Flash is being used as animation tool, like After Effects might be, but in terms of for on a large cinema screen. So this was the interactive thing we sent out, just a bit of fun really. You can move all different things. It's just something to explore and get people's attention. If you turn the sound up a bit more. That's cool. Then we went on to produce a cinema trailer. So this was shown on the big screen, and we've got a music guy at work who produced all the music for it. So you can get quite a few different people involved on something that at the first outset would be quite small, but everyone gets to experiment really with it.
The next thing is a project Dazed and Confused sent out, which is a magazine in the UK. I don't know if you know it. Send out a brief to well, it published a brief actually in the paper, saying they're gonna do an initiative called Stop for a Minute, which is inviting scriptwriters and film directors to come up with a concept for a film, for a short film that lasts only 1 minute. And the results will then be shown at Channel 4 and on a website which is called stopforaminute.com. And one of the designers in Moving Image submitted a script and actually got accepted and got funding, a small budget for it from that magazine. So we just want to show you that again as a sort of an example of experimental work, which allowed him to do that project at Deepend. And in general, I think people, if they are interested in getting involved in moving image work, for example, they could do. So they can do websites one day and do a bit of moving image the next day, which I think again is important to sort of keep your brain always fresh, and you don't end up just doing Flash because you did one project in Flash.
So I'll turn the sound up on this quite a bit because it's.
Oh yeah, that could be it. Good idea. Where is it? Yeah. Okay. Not the oh, sorry.
As design director for Deepend, you're responsible for the integrity of the design produced by your company. So what golden rules do you live by in this quest?
Oh God, the golden rules question.
Yeah.
It's quite hard to say. I mean, I think it depends it's on a job-to-job basis. You apply different kind of techniques if you want, but I don't think there are any sort of golden rules. I think what you can do is you can probably provide a sort of environment where people are more likely to create a creative work and work that's on brand and work that is on the brief. I think these are sort of, I think at Deepend we put a process into place, our creative process, which we sort of follow through, and that's got certain goalposts where you say, okay, we always start off with a well-defined brief, because that's the only way to ensure that you end up with a product that actually, fits, and it allows us as well to sometimes actually talk to the client and say, is this really what you want? And sometimes clients say, oh, we want this, and then we talk with them about it, and we actually find out what they wanted was something totally different. So I think, that's, if you could call it golden rules, that's probably what it would be. It's sticking to a creative process, which is not something restrictive, but something that just allows you to evaluate at certain points whether it's going okay or whether it's going badly, or
All right. Well, maybe some key words there. You're talking about the brief and you're talking about the process, and Deepend have quite a sort of structure in place to sort of see that happens as well. And as design director, did you, as you weren't probably a founder of the company, at what point when you joined Deepend did this sort of process become apparent? Was there someone who sort of handed this process to you, or is it something that at Deepend people know about? It has a structure to it, or
right? I think it's a fairly well. I mean, Gary, one of the founders, he always said that he wanted the company to be a very flat structure. So that nobody would be afraid to go up to him and say, complain about something or make a suggestion. And I think that's a very good way of structuring a company. Obviously, as you grow bigger, there are certain issues with that some people, new people that come in need to be able to relate to somebody and say, look, I've got a problem with this, can you help me? And I think it still is a very flat structure, and it's not the sort of design director thing that I'm going around and say, don't do this and do this. So I think pretty early on they handed over quite a lot of responsibility to, or still do, quite a lot of responsibility to people, so that they feel proud of what they're doing and they create their own responsibility for their work. And I suppose since I've been with Deepend 3 years at the point where I was made design director, it's just a sort of a natural progression where you say, okay, we're actually formally going to give more responsibility to you and just help people to orientate or point them towards you as somebody who they can ask, and who knows how things work out sometimes.
I'm Amy, and this is Josh. And just first of all, I wanted to thank IdN for bringing us to Hong Kong. And I'm going to start off talking a little bit about the internet, and we're going to do a tribute to Yoko Ono. Yoko Ono was asked at an internet conference what the internet was, and she took a spool of thread, yarn like this, and she threw it out into the internet, and she said, the internet is about connecting people. And I think that I agree with that, and I consider the internet the global umbilical cord. So I'm going to throw this out, and I want you guys to connect. So you guys can connect while we're talking. To Yoko Ono, an amazing woman, artist, we did an online magazine for NEC, and one of the projects that NEC did was this magazine called Lumina, and they do a lot of research and sponsor a lot of research projects, and one of the projects was this kind of inquiry into this crane, because Japan, China, and Russia all have all these mythologies about this crane that returns to their homeland every year, and they have festivals and celebrations and artwork that has been based on this return of the crane. And so NEC sponsored a tracking research program to find out where these cranes went during the rest of the year, and they found out that it's the same crane that goes to all these different continents. And so I found that really interesting. There's this like commuting, this kind of macro commuting of these birds, and bringing together all this research, bringing together all these different cultures. And so this is just pictures of all the main modes of transportation into San Francisco, and I started to contact the different modes of transportation and get as much live data as I could get, and found that in San Francisco, where the internet capital of the world, you couldn't really get live data. You could get some live data, but it was really, really tough. And they're working on getting live data. But what I ended up getting was daily tolls, and taking that information and interpolating it. What I wanted to do with that information was to shed light on this idea that our environment is being impacted by our growth. And so I wanted to make a chandelier that kind of shed light on this problem. And so I made some initial sketches. I'm just going to walk you through like the sketches that I made. My idea was that each of these bulbs on a chandelier would be driven by the data from a mode of transportation. And so as you would look at a day of transportation, in the morning it would peak, in the middle of the day it would lull, and at the end it would peak when people went home. And I wanted each bulb to be fed that information, and so I'll walk you through it and you'll see kind of how it evolved. This was another initial sketch of what it might look like. So I'm going to open this part. When I first thought of how these bulbs were going to be affected, I wanted them to be filled with helium, so that when the peak time of traffic, these bulbs would just blow up and float around. And when the peak traffic would happen, these bulbs would deflate and fall to the ground. And when the traffic would lull, these bulbs would fly. It's kind of representing that the less traffic, the less harm on the environment. But that was kind of a crazy idea, because helium's really hard to work with. So this was another initial sketch of the bulb. And how I wanted it to work was, I wanted it to be collapsed when there was a lot of traffic, and I wanted it to expand and have a bird inside flying when the traffic was low. So I got to do the show, and so I had 8 months to produce this thing. And so I gathered up as many resources as I could, and I worked with a sculptor, and I made this 3D model in infinity of this bird. And a sculptor made it out of wood and made a mold of it so that we could pour 5 birds and turn them into little robots. So these are just pictures of the making. And so we had to go through serious prototyping stages, and this is an early prototype of just trying to figure out how to get this thing to squash, contract and expand using data. And the initial bird, we just used cardboard. This is a picture of what the bulbs started to look like in their raw form. So on the top of each bulb was a computer, and all 5 of these were networked together to distribute the information. And this was installing the show. So each of the bulbs then had these kind of nipples on the top of them, kind of so that they would be fed this information from kind of the mothership and then come down to the ground. So this is inside the studio, inside the gallery. And this was the final bird. I shied away from the bright colors. And I'm just going to share with you really quickly the first flight of the bird, because it was really exciting to try to make something fly.
Where those braids go on the ends of the wires, because you don't want to touch the bottom board. Oh yeah. Like what you said. Like that? Don't do that. That's exactly what you should not do.
Okay, so that was an exciting moment at like 4 in the morning when we were freaking out because the bird wouldn't fly. So simultaneously, when I was working on that project, the gallery got really excited about kind of this idea of the internet, and so they wanted to open an internet cafe in what used to be their bookstore. And they asked me to propose an idea for their internet cafe, and it's located right downtown San Francisco, across from the Museum of Modern Art. And so I was trying to think of, okay, it's Yerba Buena Center for the Arts is kind of in the shadow of the Museum of Modern Art, and I want to. It's a very international space. There's a conference center right across the street as well. And so what I proposed to them was a wall of 7 monitors that basically displayed news from all over the world. And each monitor represented a continent and streamed live news from 7 to 9 different news channels that had live news on them. And I wanted each monitor to have kind of a 3D newscaster. So these are, what you're seeing are the little newscasters. And I'm just going to walk you through the process of this really quickly. This was kind of the building of the wall, and I wanted it to look like the side of an airplane, because I know when I'm traveling a lot, the one thing I really love about traveling is that you forget about what's going on in your home country, and you kind of can just relax. But when I was in Turkey a couple of years ago, I'd been gone for months, and I was completely out of touch, and I walked by a newsstand, and there was this picture of Bill Clinton with devil horns on, and it said Satan. And I was like, wow, what's that all about? And my boyfriend and I looked at the paper, and it was when he had an affair with Monica Lewinsky, and we were like, wow, that's crazy. Just like getting this little blip of news. So I thought it would be nice if people who are traveling came into this cafe and could look at the news streaming on these screens. And so we networked 7 monitors together with 2 computers. And Apple computers donated 6 iMacs, and they laid across the room on the other side of the room. And so we built a website that communicated through those 6 iMacs on the other side of the room with this wall. And this is Sasha Merg, who I work with a lot, and I'll introduce later. He helped me program this piece, and we collaborated on it conceptually as well. So he was so excited when he got 7 monitors to present all of his work. And this is a picture of the browser window inside of the website that tied together with this piece. And what we wanted to do is have people be able to type into this website whatever they wanted and have it show up on the wall across the room. And I'll show you that in a minute. And this is a picture of one of the browsers. And this is actually Europe. And so what you're seeing is you're seeing a blimp fly by, and that's actually where the type streams in from people across the room. And this is just a still, but I'll show you one in motion in a minute. And up at the top would be the URL that it was streaming live news from, and in the browser window is the live news. And so what it would do is it would make a call to the news website, read the live news, and then skip to the next website that it had in the database. And so what I'm going to show you now is actually it's a compilation of work that I've done with Sasha Merg over I guess it was the course of a year. And we compiled that cafe piece, which we called concurrently, on this CD-ROM. And if we had an internet connection, you could get some news from home. But we don't have one. So right now it's going to say it's loading. It's basically trying to go out on the internet and get some news for you. But I'm just going to scroll through the different browser windows. So these are your little news robots. And you'll see these little birds fly through the screen once in a while. And what I kind of wanted to do is to demonstrate that there really are no boundaries on the internet, and that so there's these 7 monitors, and these little birds would fly through all the 7 monitors. And there's little pollen that emits from flowers, and the pollen flies to all the different browsers as well. So these are the little 3D presenters. And there's kind of a timeout after 15 minutes, and they disappear. And there's kind of a global map that shows up in between. So there's a frog that Josh made that jumps through the screens.
These ones are, so the light blue ones, you want to throw this to someone who's made you laugh in the last couple of days. Okay. Who needs one? Communiculture.org, which we've tentatively launched. And it's a prototype. And it's a collaboration between myself and Amy and a great new designer that we've got at Futurefarmers called Brian Wan. And touch wood, this is all going to go according to plan. So I'll just sign up with a new person, IdN Kid. So it randomly produces a character for you, and you can do the boring old thing of choosing body parts, etc. But then you can submit that and go and see other people in an area called continuums. And this is directly inspired by Moreno, who came up with a method, another form of sociogram called a continuum, which is the idea that you might say to people, say there's 20 people in a room, okay, everyone who likes this, go on this side of the room, and everyone who likes that, go on this side of the room, and fill up the continuum between these 2 points. And you get to see in a physical space people's people's attitudes towards something. So I tried to replicate this on the screen, and here's an example of one. So Prototype World is going to be full of different modules, and some of them you've seen Amy's just shown, and this is the only one that's up at the moment. So you can roll over the different people that are in the continuum and read what they've put. This one's, do you prefer dogs or cats? And this person says, you can't teach a cat a new trick.
Tell them what do you prefer. What the continuum is.
Sorry?
Tell them what the continuum is.
I just did. Okay. And then you can click on one of the people and go and find out what their contributions are to other continuums inside the website. So this person, who's Xenon, has contributed to, I like to relax by fishing or sunbathing, and you can go and see where he's put himself on it, and see what other people have written, or see what he's written in there. And then you can drag yourself into the continuum. So he says, I'm so homoerotic computer, which doesn't really make much sense, but that's another nice thing about this. Doesn't have to make sense. So I'll put myself on, I prefer to sunbathe because it smells better. And save. So I did an earlier version of this project. You okay? Called Prototype World, and it was really interesting to see people fill it up. This one hasn't been online long enough to see what people have done, but it was really interesting because some of them were really silly, but some of them became really serious. So people were dealing with issues like abortion and war, and you could go and just view and see how people participated, and then see how they've participated in other modules as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this grows. So that's that. And another thing we did just recently, it's another collaboration. We've got a new president in the United States, and we thought we'd welcome him in with a small piece of design. This is a piece called Text and Draw. And we've let people draw on the president. So you can click and draw on him, and however you know. It's pretty tough to be creative in front of this many people, but you can make him say something, so I'm kind of nervous, because he should be. And then done, and then you can save that and go and have a look at how other people have defaced him. Oh.
Check out my trainers, man. They're in a state of decay. Yeah. Gonna get some new ones. Thinking about getting some Reeboks. Reeboks? Yeah, classics. Anything classic about Reeboks is how many people wear them. Listen, Josh. Reeboks give me that classic street style. Smooth. Between friends, if you want classic street style, you want the NB. What the heck's the NB? New Balance. Listen, guys who wear Reeboks get the girls, and that's what I'm after. The fuck is that? What is this thing, man? I don't know, it looks pretty technical. Oh. Cheers, Chris.
Oh, there's no sound. Oh.
Jesus, you gotta be careful with these things!
I was a partner in another company called Atlas Design, and Futurefarmers kind of spawned out of that as a response to being a partner in a kind of web design company that was starting to do very corporate work. And Futurefarmers became an avenue for me to do more experimental and playful kind of work on my own. It's kind of a hiding place, actually. And as I started to put more and more work out there, people started to visit that Futurefarmers site. And as a result, we started getting client work. And it kind of took on a life of its own. In about 1996 is when it really started to pick up. And I enjoyed doing web design, but I studied art in undergraduate school, and I also like to do a lot of tactile work. And I also like to work with different people. And so I started an artist in residency program, and that's how I met Josh. And what it is it's like a 3 to 6 month program where we kind of sponsor a student or an artist to come and work, and sometimes it's very intensive collaborative work, or sometimes they have their own project that they want to work on. And Josh came in
Last year.
2000
or 1999.
1999. No,
2000.
No, you came in 1998 as an artist in residence? No?
From New Zealand, or
No, I was a student at the Royal College of Art, and I came in the summer of 2000 to Futurefarmers.
Is this going to be your first argument?
Because we were working
well,
on
it's 2001
Lucasfilm.
now, isn't it?
We were working
And
on
it was last year.
Lucasfilm, and we did Lucas. When did Star Wars
Okay,
come out?
1999.
Okay, compromise.
Meet you halfway.
Yeah, he came as an artist in residence.
Yeah.
And at the time we were working, I'm still a partner with Atlas, but in about 1998 we decided that it was 3 of us. We decided to kind of separate and do our real true loves. And but we got approached by Lucasfilm as Atlas to do a project to do all of the episode 1 websites. But Futurefarmers was kind of the engine, because at that point Atlas didn't really have a workforce. And Josh came as an artist in residence, and he kind of got sucked into doing a lot of work for Lucasfilm. And you can talk about that.
Wow, which was fun. Just translated a few of their Shockwave games onto onto into Flash format, which was good fun. But it's funny because I'd been working on a spoof for just with a friend. We made a little spoof Star Wars film, so I showed that to Amy, and it was just good vibes because we were working on the Lucas stuff and making these funny comments on it.
So how did you like Futurefarmers therefore set out as your little playground, your little escape? So how did you I suppose mind it becoming more than just that playground sort of thing when it sort of took on its own a new identity? That were you protective of it?
I think I've always felt that it's just kind of this thing that's evolved and changed depending on kind of who's there and what we're working on, and it's kind of safe in that way because it's not like we have this serious vision as we're going to be a company and we're going to grow, we're going to only take these kind of clients. It's kind of like whatever comes at us, we decide whether we should do it or not, and as a team we decide who we want to work with. And we find it pretty important not to have a big office because we work with people who are really kind of excited about what they're doing specifically, and it makes us stronger.
In some ways it's an effort not to grow as a company because staying as a small company is quite difficult. You get jobs coming in that you have to decide whether you're going to accept or not. If you accept them, you might have to enlarge in your company, and then you're stuck with employees who might be lovely people, but then you have to keep on getting more work and compete against other companies, which means you have to bring more people in. So I think that we've been quite consciously wanting to keep it small so that we can afford to work on other projects and have sort of intimate relations with all the people that work with us.
Okay, well, I'll give it another shot. Take two. See how it looks. Ooh, there's something. See, so there's this really cool rhythm going on that we're alternating bitmaps with these lightweight wireframes. We're throwing on subtext with sort of major text. And it just creates this sort of vibe that kind of sets a pace. All right, so here we have this this bitmap. This guy, he's sort of evidence of people. That's really what we wanted to get after with the 3Com Home Connect ad. So we put on the bitmap, and then we transition to our subtext. From the subtext, we get to the bigger piece of text, and so that's one scene. We move on to the next scene. We have our bitmaps. We put them on in a slightly different way, but it's the same idea. It's on the other side of the page. We throw on our subtext. We throw on the final sort of payoff, which is possibilities. And that's the way the piece is built. It's just in this, it just goes from one scene to the next, and each scene is built with the exact same language, same moves. Another really rhythmic piece that I get into is a piece that we did for Roger Black's Interactive Bureau. This is before Circle.com bought it. And what I like about this piece is that it was built on the graphic design language of kind of the motion graphic masters, such as Pablo Ferro and Saul Bass. And what we did is Roger Black said, well, I want a piece that sort of calls back to the masters, to sort of the classic traditional graphic design, but also gives evidence that we know the web. And so we also look to motion graphic artists, the younger ones like Kyle Cooper, that are doing these sort of amazing text effects that have been evidenced in films like Seven. And so we merged the two ideas and came up with this piece. See, so there's this great rhythm being built up with the white text. That's kind of the Kyle Cooperish imaginary forces moving. And then in the background is that Saul Bass sort of slicing and build. Excuse me. So that's Roger Black's Interactive Bureau. The other one that really uses a lot of cool rhithm is our Hewlett-Packard spot. And this one's great. It's a more subtle rhythm. It's a little bit more flowing, a little more fluid. And this one, we cracked open Adobe Dimensions, and we built this little wireframe house. It took 30 minutes or something. But it turned out to be a really great element to use because we could use it as a preloader. And so as it's sort of spinning around a little bit, which it only takes a couple seconds on a 56K, the other bitmaps are sort of streaming in behind it. The bitmaps pop in, and we bring the wireframe back in to use as a little distractor element, which I'll get into actually in a couple chapters. So here's the Hewlett-Packard spot.
It's the most remarkable garage in the world. A one-car garage in need of paint. 2 workbenches, 1 used Sears Roebuck drill press, and 2 young men who simply wanted to invent things. Every garage has its rules, and so did this garage. Invent something useful. Invent something significant, or it doesn't leave the garage. And it was all very simple. So simple, in fact, it was radical. The company of Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard is being reinvented, and the original company of inventors is launched on a new career of invention.
Hewlett-Packard. Next up, we have distraction. And this really is all about kind of the way a magician works. You know, he's got something going on in one hand that sort of attracts your eye, gets you looking one way, and really the trick is being performed in the other. And what I kind of go back to 3Com because that happens, we're using it all the time. We're throwing in one element, you know, the text is coming on, and we're pulling the bitmap off at the same time. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to avoid tweening the bitmaps, these are really heavy objects that take a lot of processing power to move across the stage. So we're just throwing a little distractor in there that keeps the whole overall pace of the movie flowing as we're getting the heavier objects pulled off, so to speak. Displacement. This has a lot to do with the film editing that I started out with. Displacement has to do with the sudden shifts in time and space that kind of get you wondering, where are you? It signifies the transition from one scene to the next, and hopefully it gives you that element of surprise to keep your attention. The first one I'll show is one we did for iOmega. See, so this piece we're relying on just major shifts in the scene. We started off with that sort of graceful text effect that kind of gave you the sense of impending doom, because this spot's all about Y2K. It's all about the impending crisis. Then we showed you the scene of the person being almost being run down by the bulls, and that's the approaching doom. And then we had that sort of soft text effects, the resolve of the security, and then the final payoff, which is the sort of the solid resolve of the iOmega logo.
Sky. Swaying down this dark city lane, we are a cluster of hands and scarves, kisses and stumbling feet. But are these collisions the work of planets, atomic, celestial, or something more earthbound? Walking with you on Broom Street, catching my heel on a cobblestone, a little drunk. If matrimony is an astronomy, inscrutable physics seen from a distance, it's true your face in repose has its familiar constellations, Venusian lips, your eyes a quiet firmament. Then I want to understand the balance and force that holds me to you. Give me a theorem to live by. If love is just science, then show me its place in the sky.
I really love this piece. It's all about poetry, and the motion graphics in a way are kind of like it's kind of like poetry in itself. And the whole sort of job here, this is all Hillman's, he put this one all together himself, was all about supporting the voiceover, supporting the poem, which is really the star of the piece. This is our old homepage animation. It's got some displacing elements going on there. It's built, I think it's only 65K, so it's meant to load very quickly on a 56K connection. And the bitmaps are brought on, stay offline. The bitmaps are brought on in a way that sort of catches your eye and keeps you wanting to see more. One great thing about this piece is that the bitmaps were actually created a lot smaller than you see in the piece, and they were blurred out. And the reason for that is that when you bring them into Flash, if you bring in a blurred out bitmap, you can increase the size of it and also increase the compression, the JPEG compression on it, reducing your file size. And so that's one that this piece relies on heavily to get that low overall file size. Flow. The idea behind flow is just, it's really, we're trying to create animations or a sense of movement that goes beyond the frame of the movie that you're viewing. And one of the best examples is a piece that we did for Jonathan Klein, who's the former executive VP of CBS News. He is an entrepreneur and started his own company called The Feed Room. And what they're all about is they're a broadband news delivery service that is one of the top funded by venture capital companies in New York City last year. He wanted the piece to be about people. He wanted it to show some sort of human quality and bring that to his website. So we did just that. We showed people and silhouettes. We used a technique a lot like what you saw at Tubatomic yesterday. And that was actually a lot of fun to do because we had the talent come in and we filmed them against a white wall and set up the lights so that we could bring out the contrast, had them dress up in really dark clothing. And the idea is that we made these little animations that were kind of like, well, puppets in a way. They would be maybe 12 frames of somebody just doing one move, like a jump, or with a remote control, a click. And by putting those sequence of frames in a symbol, we were able to just kind of drag it wherever we needed to when it was time to compose the whole piece. It made production really fast and easy. So here are actually the puppets. This is to kind of give you an idea of how they're set up in the library. They're just independent symbols, and they all contain a move. And we can throw them in whenever it seems appropriate. Another great technique that I love that involves vector graphics is a nested shape tween. For those of you familiar with Flash production, you can do a shape tween, but you can't really. They have to be with broken objects, with broken lines. So what we've been working with is just taking that shape tween and nesting it in another symbol, bringing that symbol back onto the stage, so then we can work with it, change its opacity, and use all of the effects that you can use on a symbol. So notice the lines. That's really what we're after here. Let me start that over again. It's the lines that collapse around the globe. Those 4 or 5 lines are actually just one line. We just did a shape tween. We took a straight line, it shape tweens to a curve, threw it into a symbol, then we duped out 4 of those copies of that move, put it into a symbol, then drag that whole symbol onto the stage. And once we did that, we were able to control the opacity, the color, and tween that whole group.
And how long have you been creative director there for?
Been there for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And but I've been working with Hillman, I guess, for about 2 years now.
Right.
The first couple of months were great. I was just freelancing with him because before that I'd been freelancing for about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great. I had a great little gigs. You know, we got to work. Being in New York, you have access to all these different, you know, places you wouldn't be otherwhere. You know, in other places. Like I'm originally from Pittsburgh.
Right.
So, so I got to do jobs for MTV and a couple of the other big, more, you know, flashier studios.
Mm.
And I hooked up with Hillman, you know, in the meantime, and started working with him. And we early on we did work together on spots for Intel, 3Com, and a couple other, I guess, Fortune 500 companies. But it was really exciting work because in those early days it was just he and myself, and we would just sort of, you know, sit there on a conference call, get the idea with the, work it up together with the client, and just go to work. And we called it tag teaming, where we would just sort of storyboard in the first day, you know, work it out in 2 or 3 days, and deliver it by the end of the week. So these were really fast, quick ads that had to be produced, I guess, a lot faster than traditional media, and with a lot less of a budget. So those were exciting times.
Have you, I mean, before you did that, have you ever worked, when you say traditional media, do you mean sort of like print-based media and stuff? Or
Yeah, exactly.
Is that something you've done in your past, or?
Well, you know, only on the college newspaper.
Yeah.
I mean, that's about it. The my whole, I've been working on the web for about 6 years, and that's really all my design career has been.
Did you study that in college, or is it something you, I mean, was that your course that you did, or?
Yeah, you know, I've been interested in art and design since I was a kid, and so I'd always, you know, draw and illustrate. And I went to Boston College, got a degree in Slavic studies. As a matter of fact, I thought I was going to be a diplomat.
Yeah.
But you know, in the meantime, I'd been working on school newspapers, illustrating it. I actually started up a school paper with some friends. And then I went on to Parsons School of Design after, and got my second sort of college experience. And that's where I picked up a real passion for design, and got to. Are
you studying design at this time?
I'm studying design,
right,
yeah. And I'm really getting into, I guess, computer-generated design.
Sure.
I remember my first year was called the foundation year, and it was a lot of paper cutouts and a lot of, you know, I guess traditional art.
Bauhaus-y sort of.
Yeah, Bauhaus-y sort of stuff. And it was really kind of eye-opening when the second semester I got a job in the computer lab, the 6-4 lab. And that's where I really had to start learning Photoshop. I think it was at Photoshop 2.
Right, yeah.
And it was a big deal because it had layers. And so I got to learn all the ins and outs of Photoshop and Illustrator and all these, you know, I got to know the difference between vector artwork, rasterized artwork. And it really just opened my mind. And I found myself asking my teachers if I could use some of those new skills to create projects
to answer.
Yeah, that were supposed to be done in traditional media.
Yeah.
So, so that was a blast.
And did they let you?
They did, yeah. They were really open to it. They were like, "Well, if you can do it, go for it." You know. So, everybody else was bringing in projects with cutout paper and cardboard.
And
yeah, exactly, shoe boxes, and I could bring in a